When questing in the Eastern Plaguelands, classic players meet Nathana's Blightcaller, who offers a questline that has them fighting against members of the Scourge, as well as some of the Alliance-friendly High Elves that reside in the zone. His questline ends in a dungeon quest called Rammstein, which sends players into Stratholme to take down the dungeon's penultimate boss of the same name. After completing the quest, players can choose between two rings, the Elemental Circle, an uncommon resistance item, and the Royal Seal of Alexis, which surprisingly is a rare quality item known by its blue text. This on its own makes the quest kind of unique, because when a quest lets the player choose between multiple rewards, they're all supposed to have the same item quality. But there's even more to this story, as one of these rings used to belong to a rare Death Knight that for the longest time wasn't anywhere to be found. This is the story of the rare that never spawned. When finishing Nathana's Blightcaller's questline, some Horde players noted that the Royal Seal of Alexis was clearly the stronger of the two options, because even in situations where players were looking for fire resistance, which was a useful stat for things like the Molten Core raid, Elemental Circle still only provided about as much fire resistance as some of the rings players would get before level 30. In contrast, the Royal Seal of Alexis was one of the strongest options for stamina, intellect and spirit that was available outside of raid content. So much so that some Alliance players found it unfair that the quest was only available to the Horde. What many players don't know is that when World of Warcraft first released, one of the two quest rewards, the Royal Seal of Alexis, used to be bind on pickup, and it could be traded or sold to other players. This meant that even though the quest was only available to the Horde, Alliance players could still get the ring if a Horde player posted theirs on one of the neutral auction houses. And it also wasn't unique, so players could even have two of them if they wanted to. It's worth noting that at the time there were other quests that also rewarded bind and use items, such as the Gold Exchange in Elven Forest, which rewarded the Bag of Marbles, or Assault Spirit in Durotar that rewarded really sticky glue, both of which were bind and use up until patch 1.7, which released in September of 2005. But the Royal Seal of Alexis was still unique because it was a high-level valuable item that could be equipped and used permanently rather than having expendable charges. When patch 1.3 released in March of 2005, less than half a year after WoW's launch, the Rammstein quest was changed, and it would now award a new version of the ring that was identical to the original, only this one was bound on pickup. While the original bind and use version of the Royal Seal of Alexis was no longer available, the item itself did not change, and the few players who had gotten it prior to patch 1.3 were still able to trade or sell it just like they could before. Interestingly, when this happened, it was also stated in the patch notes that the ring would no longer drop from Baron Bloodbane, and instead only be available through the quest. But up until this point, players had only ever gotten the original Royal Seal of Alexis through this quest, and even though Baron Bloodbane, who was a level 59 rare Death Knight, had his own loot table that did indeed include the ring, as well as a spawn point right in front of the entrance to the next Rammus raid, he just never actually spawned within the live game. Baron Bloodbane was not mentioned in any of the questlines in the Eastern Plaguelands, and his only connection to the Warcraft universe was his name, which was one of the names that would randomly be assigned to the Death Knight hero in the third Warcraft RTS game. Strangely, he was never listed as having been removed from the game, neither before nor after appearing in the patch notes of patch 1.3. So it is possible that the developers initially weren't aware that he wasn't spawning. Another possibility is that he was originally supposed to be a part of the attunement for the next Rammus raid, similar to the rare Scarshield Quartermaster, who started a quest that allowed players to teleport into the Blackwing Lair raid directly, instead of having to enter through the portal in the Blackrock Spire dungeon. But when Next Rammus released in patch 1.11, Baron Bloodbane was still nowhere to be found, and the attunement was instead tied to the Argent Dawn faction.
See you around.
In World of Warcraft's second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King, players could encounter an NPC named Orvis Bloodbane, who first served as a quest giver in the newly added Death Knight starting zone, and later as a hostile elite during the Icecrown storyline. While some players speculated that he may be related to, or even be Baron Bloodbane, this was never officially confirmed. When the pre-patch for the Cataclysm expansion released, Baron Bloodbane was finally formally removed from the game, and so was the Rammstein quest that had awarded the Royal Seal of Alexis. Surprisingly, in the very next patch, Baron Bloodbane was added back into the game, only this time he did occasionally spawn in the exact same spot on the map, although by this time, Naxxramas had already been moved out of the Eastern Plaguelands and into Dragonblight in Northrend. At the same time, 2 other rare Death Knight riders, named Duke Greatreaver and Death Knight Soulbearer, was also added to the Eastern Plaguelands. These had actually existed within the game files ever since the beginning, although unlike Baron Bloodbane, they didn't have any spawn points or loot tables prior to their introduction in the Cataclysm expansion. While Baron Bloodbane was now finally spawning, his old loot table was changed to consist of random green items, and none of the 3 Death Knights dropped the Royal Seal of Alexis, which has remained unobtainable ever since its removal in patch 4.0.3. In the present day, the original Royal Seal of Alexis is still tradable, and some collectors have been looking to buy and sell them somewhat recently, although due to how briefly it was available, and the more than 20 years that has passed since then, it has now become one of the rarest items in World of Warcraft.